Canadian Tube Alloys Project and the American Manhattan Project turned several communist British scientists into traitors, men such as Alan Nunn May and Klaus Fuchs, who believed they were leveling the playing field and enabling world peace by passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. Of course, there were others who betrayed their country for more mundane reasons. John Herbert King, who worked in the Foreign Office cipher department in the 1930s, sold secrets to the Russians in order to maintain an expensive mistress and finance his lifestyle. Unknown to him, however, some of the secrets he sold made their way to the Germans and the Italians against whom Britain was fighting. Harry Horton displayed his desire for cash while working at the British Embassy in Warsaw when he imported goods for sale on the black market. He still had that hankering when he and his mistress, Ethel G., began to smuggle top-secret documents out of the underwater detection establishment on Portland in the mid-1950s. In various differing ways, the thread of sex runs through espionage activities in the 20th century. The Cambridge spies contained a couple of gay men in Anthony Blunt and the outrageous Guy Burgess, and one bisexual man, Donald MacLean. These men were already in danger of exposure and imprisonment for their lifestyles, and so, as people who were adept at living a double life and operating in the shadows, they were probably ideally suited to the double life of the spy. Sex also rears its head in the case of John Vassall, who was caught in a classic homosexual honey trap, which led to him spying for the Soviet Union from 1954 to 1962. Geoffrey Prime, a traitor during the 1960s and 1970s, was only caught because of his arrest for a series of vile sex offences he committed. Of course, stupidity and arrogance sometimes create traitors. Michael Bettany was an attention seeker, but his pleas to spy for the Soviets fell on deaf ears, no matter what material he tempted them with. The Second World War traitors, Theodore Search, George Armstrong, and Duncan Scott Ford, were foolish young men who made naive errors and paid for them with their lives. All these men were brought to justice under the Official Secrets Act. The first such act was passed in 1889, creating offences for disclosure of information by officials and for breach of official trust. This was bolstered in 1911 by the Official Secrets Act 1911, introduced in response to public alarm at the threat posed by Germany at the time. This alarm arose from popular novels and plays that dramatized the threat and exaggerated it. Books such as William Le Queux's 1909 novel Spies of the Kaiser, Plotting the Downfall of England, and reports such as one in the Morning Post in 1907 claiming that there were 90,000 German reservists and spies in Britain helped create a febrile atmosphere. Invasion fiction had become popular, represented by books such as Erskine Childer's The Riddle of the Sands from 1903 and Le Queux's The Invasion of 1910, published in 1906. The Agadir crisis, in which Germany dispatched a gunboat to the Moroccan port in response to the deployment of a force of French troops in Morocco, tested Britain's alliance with France, created near hysteria, and led not only to the passing of the Official Secrets Act 1911, but also to the creation of the British Secret Service. There were heavy penalties for the breach of the Act by reporting on or making sketches of military or naval installations, or even giving protection to people who had been engaged in such activities. It was amended in 1989, but the individuals in this book were brought to book by the 1911 Act. The Sturm und Drang of the 20th century produced a seemingly endless supply of traitors. Harold Macmillan's government of the late 1950s and early 1960s teetered on the brink of collapse as the Kim Philby scandal played out. It was then rocked by the exposure of the Portland spy ring, closely followed by the arrest and conviction of John Vassall. "You just can't shoot a spy as you did in the war," Macmillan is reported to have said to the head of the security service. "There will be a great public trial. Then the security services will not be praised for how efficient they are, but blamed for how hopeless they are. Then there will be an inquiry. There will be a terrible row in the press. There will then be a debate in the House of Commons, and the government will probably fall. Why the devil did you catch him?" Eventually, of course, it was the Profumo scandal that brought his government down, but the relentless sequence of spy scandals irreparably damaged the public's perception of its government. Treachery is a momentous act that impacts upon the fate of nations and the lives of everyone. The men whose stories are told in this book were responsible for countless deaths, for swings in history,